Hello, everybody. We're back here on the Hunter Call of the Wild. Well, we're not actually on the Hunter Call of the Wild today. We're on Tier List Maker. We're going to go ahead and do a tier list of every single map in the game in order of, like, what's shown here. So we're not going in any specific order. We're just going to rank every single map in the game. Clear from S tier all the way down to F tier. And it's just going to be based off of my enjoyment of the map and what I think of it. You know, there's probably going to be a lot of people that disagree with my list here, but hey, it's just my opinion at the end of the day. So first off, we have the map Hirschfelden. Hirschfelden is one of those maps where it's an original map. You know, it's got a lot of nostalgia for a lot of people, but I personally have never really liked this map that much. Now, obviously, I've had some awesome trophies come off of Hirschfelden, but overall, I don't have as many good experiences on the map as I do just bad experiences or boring experiences. So Hirschfelden, for me, it's somewhat of a bottom tier map. A lot of the species that are on here are species that have been added to maps that got added to the game after, and in most cases, those species are just easier to hunt and more fun to hunt on the other maps. However, there is one redeeming quality that I really like about Hirschfelden, and that is the European bison. The European bison hunting is really fun. They're positioned well on the map, and it's just a great time anytime I go out to hunt them. So, for that reason, it's not going to be F tier. However, Hirschfelden is a D tier map to me. It's not great, but it does have some redeeming qualities. So next up is New England Mountains. Now, if you guys have been on the channel for any amount of time longer than a couple of months, you probably know that I'm not a big fan of New England Mountains for a few reasons. Now, obviously, this map is beautiful. It is a gorgeous map, one of the prettiest maps in the entire game. But the problem with it is, because of the way that I enjoy playing the game, I am very much a trophy hunter. I'm a grinder, and this map is very difficult to trophy hunt on. Just because of how much water there is on the map, it makes it really difficult to locate like all of your herds of animals and stuff like that. And it's got a lot of reused species that we already have on other maps where, again, just like in Hirschfelden, most of those other maps that have the same species as New England Mountains just have better experiences for hunting them. Now, one really strong suit of New England Mountains is just how good the small game hunting and bird hunting is. It's got phenomenal hunting for small game, especially stuff like raccoons, red fox, gray fox, stuff like that. It's really good for those. So if you enjoy hunting those animals, I would say that it's definitely a solid option for them. But overall, it's just not an insanely great map, at least in my personal opinion. So for that reason, I'm going to put New England Mountains at... probably... I'm debating between C and D. I think high D tier. I like it a little bit better than Hirschfelden, but it's definitely not good enough to go up into C. So the next one on the list is Mississippi Acres. Now, this is a map that has kind of been one of the least enjoyed maps by the core community of Call of the Wild. This map was hyped up like crazy when it first released. It was really fun in the first month, and then it kind of just died off, and nobody really played it very often after that. Now, I think Mississippi Acres is a beautiful map. I think it's got a lot of fun hunts that you can go on, especially for the alligators. The alligators are great. The green-winged teal are quite fun. It's also a very enjoyable map to hunt some black bear. And the turkey hunting on that map is actually pretty great as well. I also do believe that it is the best map for bobwhite quail. So I don't think that Mississippi is nearly as bad as New England or Hirschfelden. So I think for that reason, this is going to be our first C tier. It's just a very mediocre map. Like, it has a lot of fun opportunities, but also a lot of things that I would probably just never do on this map, and I'd rather go to other maps. Like, for example, the white-tailed deer, they get spooked by every single gator in the area. So it's like, why even hunt them there when you could hunt them at many other maps that are just better for them? So yeah, I think C tier is fair for Mississippi. A lot of people would probably rank this in like F, but personally, I have a lot of fun hunts on Mississippi, just for very specific animals like the gators. Next up, we have Rancho del Arroyo. Now, Rancho del Arroyo is one of those maps that I have kind of a soft spot for, because this is where I got my first ever Great One whitetail deer. I'm sure a lot of you OG viewers remember that incredible moment where we spotted our very first Great One on Rancho del Arroyo 1 week after the map release. It was one of the craziest moments I've ever had on the channel, and it's just super memorable. Now, Rancho gets kind of a bad rap, I feel. There's a lot of people that don't like it. There's a lot of people that think that They should have released a better map during that time. And I gotta say, Rancho's not as good as it used to be. It's definitely not as good as it was during the first couple months of its existence, because they made some changes to it down the road that I wasn't a huge fan of, where they essentially took every population of animals and just redistributed them through the map so that they'd inhabit different parts of the map than they used to. And ever since they did that, to me, it just hasn't been as good. I really liked the OG layout for Rancho. It was so much fun back then. The whitetail were a dream. The mule deer were incredible. There were some really awesome fields where you'd always find tons of animals. OG Rancho del Arroyo just used to be a lot more fun. Now, as it stands today, it's still very good for mule deer. It's a solid whitetail deer map. It's decent for pheasants, javelina, stuff like that. But it's nowhere near the S tier. So I think, personally, Rancho to me is a B tier. It's good, but it's not great. All right, so the next option on here is Layton Lake District. And Layton Lakes is probably my favorite of the two base game maps. When you first purchase Call of the Wild, you get Layton Lake District and you get Hirschfelden. Layton is definitely my favorite of the two. Layton is a map that I've probably spent more time on than any other map in the entire game. Primarily because I've done both my moose and whitetail deer Great One grinds primarily on that map. And I love it. It is my favorite place to grind for both of those species. And on top of that, it's got great animals like the black-tailed deer. It's got the Roosevelt elk. Obviously, you can find stuff like coyotes as well as the mallard and a few other species. It's a really awesome map. I definitely think it is probably one of my favorite maps of all time. I rarely rank it in my top 5 whenever viewers ask me what my top 5 are, but it's just such a good map. Now, is it S tier? Probably not. But is it A tier? Definitely. It is a great map. And now we get to Parque Fernando. Man. Parque Fernando has fallen off hard over the years. When Parque Fernando first came out, this was a phenomenal map. It was very unique. It was pretty groundbreaking at the time. It had a lot of species that we had not seen before. There was a lot of fun animals, and I have a lot of memories of hunting Parque Fernando on the early days of my Twitch stream before I really took it seriously. So probably 6 years ago or something like that. I mean, Parque Fernando's literally where I got my first ever diamond in Call of the Wild, a beautiful diamond red deer that many of you have probably seen here on the channel. But over the years, it's just not as good. When they did the population redistribution and also changed the zone times for a lot of animals, the map just never felt the same. And to add on top of it, every single species that is on this map has been added to other maps where it's just more fun and better to hunt them. Aside from Cinnamon Teal, I believe they're the only one that has not been added. Technically, Puma as well, but they're the same thing as Mountain Lion on Silver Ridge. So Parque Fernando, unfortunately, just doesn't have much going for it nowadays. And on top of it, it's a very brushy map. It's got rough terrain, so it's hard to get close to a lot of animals. And it's really tough to set up stands and things like that in convenient locations because of the terrain and just how brushy and jagged the terrain is. So for that, this is our first F tier. I think Parque Fernando has fallen off hardcore over the years. It used to be an A tier map, and now it's unfortunately an F tier for me. But remember, this is just my opinion, guys. Don't get too mad. Now we get to Revontuli Coast. This is one of my favorite maps of all time. Revontuli has literally everything. It's got big game with brown bear, moose, whitetail, etc. It's got small game like the raccoon dog, the mountain hare. It's got tons of waterfowl and upland birds. And the map itself flows super, super well. The lower half of the map is very brushy, but it's brushy in a way where you can still see stuff. It's got a lot of trees, but they don't have a lot of leaves and stuff on the lower halves of them, so you can still see through them very easily. There's lots of water, so if you enjoy hunting drink zones, there's plenty of them to go to. And the upper half of the map is super wide open and hilly, and it makes for a really fun run and gun experience where you can just pick a direction and run, and you'll find tons of animals. And on top of that, it's a great grinding map for both whitetail deer and moose. I know so many people that grind the whitetail on there. I've grinded moose on there before and got 2 Great One moose off of Revontuli Coast. Revontuli is just a great map. It is one of the most fun maps in the game, and for that reason, it's the first S tier on the list. Now, next up on the list is the newest map in the game, Sundarpatan. This map is really different compared to any other map that we've ever got. It's based in Nepal, and we have some crazy animals like the Bengal tiger. We've got the Himalayan tar. We've got the snow leopard. We've got the Barasinga, and so many other great animals. And this is also the first map where we got the water buffalo reused. So it's a great map for some of the old species like water buffalo and black buck. I'd say it's probably the best map for both of those species. And then it's got so many new animals as well that just have such a unique feel to them. Tiger hunting is unlike anything else in the game. The tar are a very unique hunt to go on as well. Snow leopards are probably the toughest and most elusive animal in the entire game. And on top of it, the map is gorgeous. This map is just absolutely phenomenal. I cannot say enough good things about it. It is my favorite map in all of Call of the Wild, I do believe. And for that, it is going to be top of S tier. It's above Revontuli. It's just a phenomenal map. Now, next up on the list is another map that I have spent countless hours on, hunting for red deer and fallow deer great ones, going into the mountains to search for chamois, going for sika deer, feral pigs, all the amazing species that are on here. This map has it all. This is one of the most underrated maps in the game, in my personal opinion. So many people hate on Tiabaroa, but it's really amazing. It's a really fun map. It's got a lot of open areas on the map where it's very easy to see animals. So if you want to do just like a run and gun hunt style where you just run around and shoot whatever you see, it's got lots of open areas where you can do that. Lots of amazing fields to hunt. It's got a lower amount of water than most maps. So if you're hunting drink zones, you're not going to have to search nearly as much to find all of your animals. And if you're going for a fallow deer or red deer great one, this is by far the best map for both of them. Tiabaroa is a great experience. It's a very unique map. It's a very pretty map. It's got a ton of deer species. So for those reasons right there, I think Tiabaroa is probably... this is a tough one. Do I put it bottom of S tier or do I put it top of A? I mean, I feel it's S tier. I really feel like it's S tier. I don't think it's better than Rev or Sunder Patton, but I do think that it deserves to be in the S tier. Next up, we have Cotw. Cotw is another one of those maps that was really good at one point, and then just more stuff has been released over the years that have kind of made it lose popularity and lose that like spark that it used to have. At one point, Cotw was the best red deer map in the entire game, before the existence of Tiabaroa, of course. This map was so good for it. It also probably is the best roe deer map in the game. But honestly, aside from it being the best roe deer map in the game, I think really the only other thing that it's super good for is, at least in my opinion, pheasants. And then obviously you have the ibex being a pretty unique thing on here. But I mean, aside from all of that, I don't really see too much else that interests me with Cotw nowadays. This used to be like one of my favorite maps of all time, but there's just been so many good maps released since then that it's kind of fallen down. Now, because of all the reasons I did mention, this is nowhere near being an F tier or a D tier map. I think, again, it's kind of just a middle of the road map. This is going to be our second C tier. The question is, do I put it above or below Mississippi? I feel like it deserves to be above Mississippi. I think it does have a little bit more going for it, so it is going to go in the high C tier. Next up, we have Virhonga Savannah, one of the most unique maps in the game. It's the only map based in Africa, and because of that, it has a lot of unique species that no other map has, whether it's lions or wildebeest or gemsbok or springbok or kudu or many of the other animals that you can find on this map. It's got a lot going for it. It's also a very wide open map, so it's very easy to hunt if you just like to pick a direction and run and just shoot whatever you can find. If you're a drink zone grinder, it's got a lot of convenient drink zone grinding because there's not a lot of water on the map. So overall, Virhonga is just a really well-balanced map that's a lot of fun for a lot of people. Now, one negative to it is it doesn't have any of like the animals you would expect an Africa map to have. Like, it doesn't have elephant, it doesn't have like leopards or zebras or anything like that. But aside from it lacking some species, it does have a lot of fun hunting, and it's a really like good looking map as well. So I'd say Verhonga is probably A tier as well. I wouldn't put it as high as Layton, but I'd say it's right below Layton in the A tier. Next up, we have a fan favorite, Yukon Valley. So many of you are constantly asking for Yukon videos. Like throughout all the years that I've done content creation, Yukon is probably the most requested and mentioned map aside from like maybe Silver Ridge Peaks. You guys love this map. I've personally never liked it as much as a lot of the community does. Now, don't get me wrong, it is one of the prettiest maps in the game. However, I just feel like it's lacking a little bit in the species department. It's got a lot of cool species, don't get me wrong, but I feel like there's not enough of them. I feel like if they would just add doll sheep plus either some type of elk or a Sitka deer or something like that, I feel like this map could be 10 times better. If it had like doll sheep and Sitka deer, this would 100% be an S tier or A tier map for me. But because it doesn't have as many species as I'd like it to have, and a lot of the species that are there are not really my cup of tea, I'd say this is probably going to be a B tier. Now, I think it's better than Rancho, probably. So we'll put it in high B tier, but to me, it's not A or S tier, unfortunately. Next up, we have Silver Ridge Peaks. Silver Ridge Peaks is another map that has been a fan favorite over the years. This used to be my favorite map in the entire game. Unfortunately, over the years, they've made some changes to it that I wasn't particularly fond of. Like, originally, they had like made bears go from daytime drink zones to nighttime drink zones, and they like shortened the drink zone time for them slightly, and then they recently have brought it back to being daytime drink zones. They moved a lot of animals around where they didn't really need to be. Before the rework to this map, there was just so many hunts that were a lot more fun than they are now. For example, now they don't have any drink zones for mountain goats, and they moved them to a part of the map that to me doesn't make sense at all. They took them out of the high mountains and put them in the low mountains, which I don't know, man. It does not make sense to me at all. They need to bring back the drink zones for the mountain goats to make that hunt exciting again, or at least put them in the high mountains where they should be. If they just move them around to where it made sense, that would make it a lot more fun to hunt. And then on top of it, they made mountain lions drink at night. They did do something really good with the Rocky elk where they made them drink in the morning time when it's actually light, because they used to be in the dark more, if I'm not mistaken. And they gave them better locations. Pronghorn, unfortunately, are not as fun as they used to be, as they gave them a nighttime drink zone as well. So there was just a lot of changes I did not like when they revamped all of the home ranges and stuff like that on Silver Ridge. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still a great map. It is the best bear map in the game for black bear. It's got a lot of fun hunts, a lot of fun run and gun hunts. One of those maps where you can just pick a direction, run, and probably find lots of animals just because it's Silver Ridge Peaks. There's animals everywhere. Lots of open fields on this map. Overall, it's a great map, but I feel like it's just nowhere near as good as it used to be. And you know what? This is going to be the first time in probably over a year that I've changed my kind of like ranking for Silver Ridge. I don't think Silver Ridge is better than Layton now. I think Silver Ridge belongs right here. Right here. Because it's just not as good as it used to be. So next up we have Medved Taiga. Medved is an interesting one. I've got kind of a love-hate relationship with this map right here. It's one of those maps where it used to be my least favorite. I did not like this map at all for years and years. And then they did the population redistribution where they changed a lot of the home ranges of the animals. They moved them around quite a bit. They backfilled, added some more species to it to make it more interesting, with that being the capercaillie and also the gray wolf. They also changed the drink times to make some of them just a lot better than they were previously. I don't know if I mentioned that already. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. We'll see. But point is, it's got better over the years. There's a lot of really fun hunts on Medved now. It's also one of the best maps to grind for the Great One Moose. Now, personally, I think Revontuli and Layton are better, but it's still a solid map to go to if you want to grind for a Great One Moose. Even with that being said, though, it still doesn't have a ton to offer in comparison to a lot of the other maps. So for that reason, this is once again going to be a C tier map. I'd say this is probably high C tier. I'd say it's better than Cotw. and Mississippi, but actually, no, never mind. Maybe it's not. You know what? I'm going to say bottom of C tier for Medved. Yeah, bottom of C tier sounds about right to me. And you know what? We're actually going to make one adjustment to this tier list, because I think something needs to change now that I've thought about it more. I think Rancho needs to go down to top of C tier, because the more I think about it, Rancho's not a map that I really would choose for too many of my hunts. Like when I'm going to create videos, Rancho's not really one that I think of that often. It's not going to be a map that I go to consistently. I'd probably go to Yukon more often nowadays, to be honest. So yeah, I'm going to say it's top of C tier now. So now that we made that small adjustment, it's time to get to the final one. Emerald Coast. Now, Emerald Coast is the second to last map that was released in the game. This is a really awesome map. It's based in Australia. It's got a lot of cool species like the kangaroo, saltwater crocodile, bantang. It's also a really fun map to hunt for the red deer great one or the fallow deer great one. It's got a little bit of everything. You've got a lot of small game. You've got actually quite a bit of big game with like the rooster deer, sambar deer, bantang crocodile, kangaroo, fallow deer, red deer, probably more than I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But point is, this map's got a lot of species. And if you're a deer hunter or just a antlered and horned animals hunter in general, this map is phenomenal. It's also laid out very well, like the animals' home ranges are set up very nicely. The map is very pretty looking. It's got some of the most unique hunting in the entire game. And it's just a great map overall. I've had so many fun moments on this map. I have done so many hunts on Emerald Coast. As you guys probably know, during the last 2 years, I've hunted this map a lot. It's a great map. Would I say it's better than Sunderpatten or Revontuli? I don't know. I think it's not better than Sunderpatten for sure. Emerald Coast was my second favorite map. But the more I think about it, the more I feel like it's not my second favorite map anymore. Part of that could be because I've kind of exhausted all the content from it. I've hunted it so much that I've ran out of things to do there. It's still a phenomenal map, still one of my favorites, but I don't know if it's my second favorite anymore. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm going to say... right there. I think it's the third best map in the game. I think it's still S tier. It's one of the better maps we have. But yeah, it's definitely not my favorite out of all of them. And you know what? I'm going to make one more adjustment. Because now that I'm looking at it, I feel like Tiabaroa is not on the same level as Emerald Coast, Revontuli, and Sunderpatten. So I'm going to bump this down to top of A tier. Yeah, I think that is a much more nice looking list we've got going. So there you have it, guys. That is my final ranking for all of the maps in the Hunter Call of the Wild as of 8/17/2024. So yeah, there it is. There's my tier list. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, leave a comment down below and let me know that you enjoyed it. If you haven't already, sub to the channel and be sure to hit that like button before you leave. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.